Blessings, everyone. Today, I want to share with you an experience I had during the time, the 3 years after the Christ experience, when if you've watched that video, there was a time about 3 years that lasted where I had a really tough time being around people in society. One place I would go, though, my mother was part of this group. It was like a spiritual group. They would get together. It was mostly older people, some middle-aged people. I would go at the time. I was 28, maybe. 28. Maybe 27. I can't remember. And so what happened was and I'll describe this in detail, but ultimately I don't know if this was Christ or if this was God. But it was the throne of God sitting on the throne. They were on the throne, and it was descending down into my presence. Now let me explain how that happened. So we're there at this meeting, and there was always like a little introduction thing, kind of like a centering, and then there'd usually it was pretty organized. The lady who ran it was awesome, loving soul, did it for many years, had the best of intentions to explore and spread the wonder of humanity and try to be a light in the world. So she was older at this point, I think in her 80s. So we're at this meeting, and it starts off an introduction. We do all that, and I can't remember what the topic was or whoever was speaking that night or presenting, or it was kind of different every time. It was pretty loose structure on it, but I don't remember the details of the night. But I do recall at one point the discussion in the room became, someone had a point they were making and they felt passionately about it, and someone else had a little bit different way of seeing it, and this back and forth started. If you were just to transcribe the words and read it later, it wouldn't sound like, you might not necessarily think it was like an argument or turmoil going on too much. Almost you could just say, oh, it's a good discussion. It's people bouncing ideas off each other, and they believe one thing, they believe another, agree to disagree. You could kind of be like that. Oh, it's a good jostling of points of view. But me being in the state I had been in, of this peace of the Lord that was profound beyond words, I was very sensitive to the energy behind what was being said, and it was hitting me all the way down to my solar plexus and my heart. It did not feel good. And sitting there feeling this was disturbing to me, and I had a yearning inside of me for the peace that was within me. This was so subtle, I can't even say, like, I thought to myself, I wanted this peace to be in the room and for everyone to just stop and be at peace. It wasn't that deliberate. It was more of a, like, oh, the sick feeling. But in the very, very subtlest essence of it, now that I look back, it was like, I had really not much desire in the moment, but it was a subtle yearning for, oh, this is so disharmonic. This does not feel good. And it continued, and it was getting worse. The energy was building. And I was getting very uncomfortable, but just was a very shy person, and sitting there. And then I began to feel, at first I didn't know what it was. It was this presence. And a presence in a way that it's different from how I had ever experienced it. My eyes were open, so I'm looking with my normal eyes in the room, but at the same time my eyes are open, I'm seeing first I felt this is tough to describe. First I felt flames. So first it felt like I was sitting on a throne. It was weird because I'm sitting there and it's my normal little body, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was sitting very regally, like I was sitting with my back straight, my chin was where it should be, my shoulders were back, and my arms were laid down like on armrests of a throne. And this was more internally. It was like my soul was being put in this position. And all I can describe is it felt like I was in a fire, but not a physical fire that would burn your body. It was a fire. It was this raging fire. And as I'm sitting in that, I'm sitting in it in the position, but at the same time, I'm having this subtle yet profound vision, because I can still see it to this day, of I didn't see who this was above. It was like from their knees down, and I could see the bottom of the throne, their knees down. I could see like their hands over the edge of the armrests, and it was between the flames hitting my soul, the position I felt myself in this vision of God with his flame there. At this point, I'm no longer focused on the room at all and what's going on. I am in between being really scared because I don't know what I'm feeling and I have no control over this. So I'm in between being really scared and excited. And my heart starts racing within me to the point where that was frightening also. Like, I've never had an anxiety attack in my life. except for when the spirit of heaviness, if you've ever watched that video, that feeling was definitely tough. But besides that, I'm not an anxious person usually. I'm usually pretty calm. My heart was beating so hard that I remember feeling like this, people around me are going to notice my heart beating so hard. Like this, what I'm feeling, these out of control raging flames on me, this thrown feeling where my very being is not where I've always known it to be. Like it's me, I'm here, I'm in my body. I may have emotions and things, but this was my being, this fire, this throne, this slight vision of God in his throne. It was like God, it was above me and it was coming down. I don't even know how to describe what it was, the state I was in at that point. Heart racing, literally like a little bit afraid for my physical health at that point. So then this story from this flame downloads into my consciousness. And it's like I'm in, the only way I could describe it is if like I was now like say an angel or something, and I was able to go and witness this scene playing out before me and know the emotions, the thoughts, and the depth of every person, every actor in the scene. And I could see the bigger picture beyond what they could see. So I could perceive all this at the same time. Would be my way of describing what it felt like when this story came to me. So, and it let me know immediately that this story was a parable about what was going on in the room with the arguing amongst everyone. So what the story was, and it was like it unfolded in the meaning as the story went. It unfolded the full meaning to me and it blossomed out. So in the beginning, it started off, everyone in this story that came to me was also in turmoil, just like in the room. And then it brought me to, there were three main characters in the parable. There was a little girl, and there was the father and the mother of the little girl. And I believe it was the little girl's birthday, or it was some day that was special to the girl. And the father was being mean to the girl. The mother was upset with the father. They were arguing. The father was in inner turmoil. And that's how it started. And then God let me see what was really going on. So the little girl had wanted a bicycle. I think it was her birthday or Christmas or something. She really wanted a bicycle. And then it showed me that the father loved this little girl. This little girl was everything to him. He loved his daughter. And he wanted to get her that bicycle and fulfill her desire. But he didn't have enough money. Where he worked, he didn't make much money. He couldn't get it for her, and he felt like a failure. And he couldn't bear that he couldn't get his daughter what he wanted. And out of feeling like a failure and he couldn't get his daughter what he wanted, he couldn't deal with it, so his heart was hardened. And he in his anguish, he shut down and he became angry and frustrated and didn't want to deal with these feelings, but they were in him. So on this day when it was supposed to be joyous and beautiful and love and honoring his daughter and being the wonderful father that brings the gift to his daughter, he wasn't able to do that. So in his frustration, he was angry and ashamed, and he couldn't deal with the birthday. So he became angry and critical about the cake the wife cooked, and started criticizing the wife. And I could feel this was all emanating from his. It all emanated from love. He wanted to show his love to his daughter and felt like he couldn't. So out of the frustration of not feeling like he couldn't give what he wanted to give, everything went horrible. He's being critical to the wife. The wife's upset and she's mad at him. The little girl is upset, more so that her father isn't being nice. And then the father started being mean to the little girl. Like he couldn't deal with his real feelings. They were too overwhelming. So he justified that. It wasn't clear exactly what he was justifying, but it was showing me how he reacted and had to react in this harsh way to protect himself from the pain. And so the whole scene was chaos, just like in the room that I was actually sitting in. And what God was showing me was, amongst the chaos in humanity, if we trace it back to its essence, it's always because we want and yearn to love and to share our gifts and bring joy to our loved ones, to our fellow man. And we're really just frustrated because we either don't know how to do it, we feel unworthy, we can't find that place within ourselves to bring forth what we want. That was the essence of this little story that was put into me. So what it helped me do was, rather than get upset from what was going on in the room. So now the flames stay there. The flames are still on me. The story ends. Yet I'm left with this vivid story, and I know the full depth of it and the full meaning that was being purveyed. And I knew I had to speak this story. And the flames are so strong on me. Now my heart's really beating, and they're arguing in the room still. And normally, if I'm going to say something like this, my normal personality would want to set the stage a little bit, describe, this just happened to me. Oh my gosh, let me explain this to you. I think there's a good message here. That would be my normal ego and way of processing. But with this fire on me, I couldn't access that part of me. It was holding back all my self-image and my own personal personality. In the Spirit of God, or that was, I don't know what that was. That was the flames of the throne. Is when I think of that, when I think of the throne of God, I think of these raging, so powerful, and such insight and wisdom to see through to the core of things. Whatever that is, prompted me. And I don't know if I could have resisted this. If I used every ounce of my will, I might have been able to run and shut down and no, I can't do this. But you're kind of like a deer in the headlight. At least I was. I was paralyzed in these flames. And so my heart's beating, and everyone's still. It's like this, almost like the presence of God almost helped bring this up. In that presence, people were, their anxiety was coming out, kind of like in the parable. And I can't remember how I started it. I think I said, everyone have something I want to tell you. And I just told the story. It's weird because afterwards I remember thinking, when Jesus told parables, this is the same way. And when he said, I don't know if he says, I say what my Father tells me, or I do. But in that little moment, and I'm not claiming to be like Jesus, but I'm saying in this moment, the way it had me say it, I could see a similarity as to the way Jesus would give parables. And I'm sure lots of human beings on this planet who this fire has been on them, they've spoken in this way. But that was a realization afterwards. So it has me stop the room, and everybody stops and looks at me because I'm usually pretty shy, and I think they're like, oh, you got something to say? And so I tell the story as if I tell the story, and I didn't describe that it was a story. I wasn't given permission to do that. It was just say it as it is. So it kind of came out like there was this father, and he had a daughter and his wife, and his daughter wanted a bicycle. She really wanted a bicycle for her birthday, and the father really wanted to. So I say it in that way, and I describe it just the way I had described it to you before. And I'm crying in it, in front of everyone, fully feeling the emotions of the father and the daughter, and in the full knowing in me of what's really going on is there, and I speak it. And when I'm done speaking, I look around, and almost everyone I looked at is looking at me with a look of kind of like, I remember looking at the one guy, and it was just a look of like, what the hell's wrong with you? Like, or what do you, like, they had enjoyed the arguing and didn't like being erupted with this story. And at the same time, when I'm seeing that in a lot of people's eyes, where normally that would have affected my personality, and I would have felt, not ashamed, but I would have felt like, oh, what did I just do? Maybe I need to explain myself and try to defend myself for what I just did. These flames, I was at peace. I just spoke it, saw what was in their eyes, I was at peace. And then someone says out loud, I think they said something like, oh, that happened to you? Like they thought I was telling a story, even though I didn't have a daughter. I wasn't married at the time. They thought it was my life story that I was telling. And I didn't even have the power in me to defend, like to even answer that back. These flames were still there. I just spoke it. I was under the power of these flames of God. And one person in the room stood up after that was said, and they were crying, and they said, no, you don't understand. Like this lady she got it. She ran out of the room crying. And no one else really got it. Even people in my own family. And I was kind of paralyzed the rest of the night. I could politely answer and talk. It slowly subsided, and the throne went away in the flames. And I never explained myself to anyone. I never tried to go back and make excuses for myself or for God. And I just remembered what had happened to me, and I wanted to share it with you in case any of you have ever experienced the throne of fire and the downloading of a story with such depths and then the speaking of it. If it's happened to you and you're thinking you're crazy or was that real, and me sharing this can affirm, that's why I'm sharing this. So yeah, this was the throne with the fire, which I have not felt that since. But it's magnificent. It is. It's different from the Spirit of God. It's different from the Christ experience I had. Now, I don't know, this could be Christ now that he is in his glorified body and on a throne next to the Father. I don't know. That wasn't given to me. That insight wasn't given. I wasn't shown above the knee. But it is magnificent. You realize your I don't want to say you realize your weakness when you're in this present, but you realize your the humbling. Like, I could see if this presence descended down upon the earth and you had lions that were raging, ready to attack, or some big beast, an elephant charging, or a crowd of people that were out to harm another group, this fire and this presence could drop. Everyone would drop. In your being. It's a good feeling. But you know what the word holiness means in this presence. And you know, look, I had heard people say earlier in my life, like the fear of God. And I never liked that word. I always thought, fear of God? I thought God's loving. What are you talking about, fear of God? Now, if someone says fear of God, I don't have a judgmental reaction to it. Because from that experience, that's what I relate. And it's not the normal fear I used to think of about it. It's this fear, not really a normal way of thinking of fear. It's not really a fear. It's more of a tough to describe it. It's an awe. You're so awed that you're a deer in the headlights of this presence. And you're like, you can't stand in it. You just submit willingly. You willingly, at least I was willing. And you trust it. It's wise. Yeah, okay, so that's what happened that evening that came to me. Wanted to share it with you. Hope it touches somebody. Love and light. Blessings.